On Thanksgiving Day, I sat alone at the dinner table I'd spent all day preparing when I received the text. Dad, we're in Europe getting away from you. After 3 years of loving and sheltering my daughter in my own home, she thought I was just a lonely old man who would swallow every pain in silence. She was wrong. I stayed silent and made one phone call that changed everything. A week later, she called 37 times, crying and begging. But by then, I had discovered what she'd really been doing behind my back. She underestimated the wrong man. Before we continue, please tell us in the comments where you're watching this from and what time it is there right now. Have you ever experienced family betrayal during what should have been a special moment? The aroma of roasted turkey filled every corner of the house on Maple Street, mixing with the scent of Maria's famous cornbread stuffing that I'd spent 3 hours perfecting. My hands steady from years on the bench, as a judge now trembled slightly as I adjusted the centerpiece for the 4th time. The dining room looked exactly like Maria would have wanted warm amber light from the chandelier she'd picked out 23 years ago, her grandmother's china gleaming against the burgundy tablecloth and 2-place settings waiting for the family that made this old house feel like home. San Antonio's November evening was unusually cool, and I'd opened the windows to let the breeze carry the mesquite smoke from the neighborhood barbacoa joints. This was our tradition, Thanksgiving dinner at 7 sharp, just like when Maria was alive. Just like when Madeline was small and would help mash the sweet potatoes while standing on her little wooden stool. I checked my phone again. 6:30. Madeline and Hunter were running late, but that wasn't unusual. Traffic on I-35 could be brutal on holidays, and they'd mentioned something about picking up wine. I smiled, imagining Madeline's face when she saw I'd made tres leches, cake her childhood favorite that Maria used to bake every birthday. The doorbell rang and my heart jumped with anticipation. But it was Mary Thompson from next door holding a covered dish and wearing that concerned expression she'd perfected over 30 years of neighborhood watch duties. Nathaniel, I saw your lights on and wanted to check. Are you expecting company tonight? Of course, I said, perhaps too quickly. Madeline and Hunter will be here any minute. You know how young people are with time. Mary's eyes swept past me to the perfectly set table, the cooling turkey, the untouched wine glasses. It's just past 7, dear. Are you sure they're coming? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Madeline. Finally. Dad, we're in Europe getting away from you. Stop bothering us. The words blurred together, then sharpened with devastating clarity. I read them again, certain I'd misunderstood. Europe. Getting away from you. Stop bothering us. Nathaniel. Mary's voice seemed to come from very far away. What is it? You look pale. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The phone felt heavy in my hands as I stared at those 12 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my daughter. Not, we can't make it, or something came up. They were in Europe, had planned to be in Europe, while I spent all day cooking her favorite meal, setting the table with her mother's china, believing we were family. I'm fine, Mary. I managed my voice steadier than I felt. Just a change of plans. She lingered at the door, clearly wanting to help, but I gently closed it before she could see me fall apart. The house fell silent, except for the grandfather clock in the hallway, Maria's clock ticking away the minutes of the loneliest Thanksgiving of my life. I walked back to the dining room and stood looking at the feast I'd prepared with such hope. The turkey golden and perfect. The stuffing made from Maria's handwritten recipe card stained with decades of use. The tres leches cake waiting in the kitchen made with love for a daughter who was on another continent running from me. The candles flickered in their holders, casting dancing shadows across the empty chairs. I pulled out my phone again, hoping I'd imagined it, but the message was still there. Cold, calculated, final. For 62 years I'd believed in family and forgiveness, in the bonds that hold us together through everything. Maria used to say that love was patient, that children sometimes lose their way but always come home. But as I sat alone at that table surrounded by the remnants of my hope, I realized that some betrayals cut too deep for patience. Something hardened in my chest, not anger exactly, but something colder, more permanent. I wouldn't be anyone's fool anymore, not even my own daughter's. Dawn broke gray and cold over San Antonio as I sat with my morning coffee alone, but strangely clear-headed. The house felt different, not empty but cleared of illusions. By sunrise I knew exactly what needed to be done. The retired judge was waking up inside the grieving father, and it was about time. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to James Patterson's number. He'd been my court reporter for 15 years before law school, one of those rare people who understood that justice was about precision, not emotion. Nathaniel. James's voice carried surprise. How was your Thanksgiving? Educational. James. I need legal representation. Family law, specifically eviction proceedings. You're evicting someone, my daughter and her husband. They've lived here 3 years under the pretense of temporary housing. Last night, I learned what they really think of my hospitality. Why not handle this yourself? You've got more courtroom experience than most attorneys in this city. Because I can't be objective about my own daughter, and she knows it. She's counting on my emotional attachment to cloud my judgment. I need someone who can see this clearly, without 34 years of birthday parties getting in the way. I understand. Can you be here by 10? James's office occupied a restored Victorian building downtown, all exposed brick and modern furniture. He'd done well since leaving the courthouse. Tell me everything, he said, settling behind his desk. I laid out the facts methodically. The 3-year arrangement, the gradual assumption of permanence, the text message that revealed their true feelings. James took notes, treating me like any other client seeking justice. Let's examine the financial aspect, he said, pulling up my bank account. You mentioned they have power of attorney for emergencies. Medical emergencies only, or so I thought. His expression changed as he reviewed the screen. Nathaniel, when did you last check your statements? I trusted them with day-to-day expenses, groceries, utilities. James turned his monitor toward me, pointing to transfers highlighted in red. These aren't groceries. 2,000 here, 1,500 there, 3,000 last month, all going directly to Madeline's personal account. $62,000 over 2 years. Not mistakes, but systematic theft disguised as authorized transactions. She's been stealing from me, I said quietly, my own daughter. The legal term is financial exploitation of an elderly person, James said gently. The power of attorney was for medical decisions, not funding their lifestyle. I stared at 2 years of betrayal, laid out in neat columns. Every transfer represented a choice Madeline had made to abuse my trust, to see me not as her father, but as income. What are my options? We file for eviction immediately. 30-day notice. We can also demand restitution and revoke all power of attorney privileges. James leaned back. But I warn you they won't go quietly. Family evictions get ugly. I thought about Maria, about what she'd say. She'd believed in forgiveness and family above all. But she'd also taught me that love without boundaries wasn't love, it was enabling. Prepare the eviction notice, I said, and James, make it airtight. They're going to fight this, and when they do, I want to be ready. Leaving his office with financial records under my arm, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of taking control of my own life. The hurt remained, probably always would, but it was wrapped now in determination. Madeline had forgotten something important about her old man. I hadn't spent 30 years on the bench by being anyone's fool. Car doors slammed in my driveway Tuesday afternoon, cutting through the quiet like gunshots. I'd been expecting this moment for a week, ever since James delivered the eviction notice with instructions to serve it immediately upon their return. Through my study window, I watched Madeline and Hunter drag suitcases from their Uber, both suntanned and relaxed from their European escape. They had no idea what awaited them. Dad, we're back. We brought chocolate from Switzerland. Madeline's cheerful voice called out casual entitlement, intact, as if that text message had never been sent. Their footsteps stopped abruptly in the entryway. I knew they'd found the manila envelope taped to the hall mirror, notice to vacate, in bold letters. What the hell is this? Hunter's voice sharp and angry. I emerged from my study to find them staring at the legal documents. Madeline had gone pale beneath her vacation tan. Hunter held the papers like they might bite him. It's exactly what it says. You have 30 days to find other accommodations. Madeline's eyes filled with tears, the same manipulation she'd perfected as a teenager. Dad, what's this about? We didn't mean anything by that text. Didn't mean anything? I kept my voice controlled. You told me you were getting away from me, while I sat alone at Thanksgiving dinner. We were stressed. Hunter stepped forward, chest out, the aggressive posture I'd seen in my courtroom from men who thought intimidation was strategy. We needed space. That doesn't mean we move out. Actually, it does. This is my house. Your guests who've overstayed your welcome. Madeline's tears turned to sobs. We don't have anywhere to go. We can't afford our own place. Dad, please, I'm sorry about the text. The text isn't why you're being evicted. Hunter's eyes narrowed. Then what is $62,000? Taken from my accounts over 2 years through power of attorney, meant for medical emergencies only. Color drained from Madeline's face. Hunter's posture faltered momentarily before returning full force. That's ridiculous, Hunter said. We used that money for household expenses. You benefited too. $2,000 grocery bills. I may be old Hunter, but I'm not stupid. You're being unreasonable, Madeline pleaded. We can pay you back. We just need time. You've had 3 years. Time's up. Hunter crumpled the papers. You can't just throw us out. We have rights. We'll fight this in court. You're welcome to try. Something dangerous flickered in Hunter's eyes. Maybe we will, and maybe we'll let the judge know about your recent behavior. The paranoia, sudden irrational decisions, the way you've been acting erratic and confused. The threat hit like a physical blow. I'd seen this tactic in family court adult children claiming parents were mentally incompetent to gain control. Are you suggesting I'm not mentally competent? I'm saying a judge might wonder about a 70-year-old man who suddenly turns on his family without warning, especially one living alone, isolated, possibly not taking care of himself properly. I'm 62. Sometimes you seem confused about things like that. Hunter's smile was cold. Memory issues can be a real problem at your age. Madeline looked uncomfortable but didn't stop him. That silence spoke volumes. We're not leaving, Hunter continued. And if you try to force us, we'll make sure everyone knows you're not capable of making these decisions. A competency hearing might be exactly what this family needs. After they stormed upstairs, I stood alone in my hallway, understanding the full scope of what I faced. This wasn't just about eviction anymore. They were preparing to attack my mental fitness to paint me as a confused old man. But they'd made one critical error. I wasn't just any confused old man. I was a retired judge who knew exactly how these battles were fought, and I had no intention of losing. The business card felt heavy in my fingers as I sat outside the downtown office building. Elena Vasquez, elder law attorney. I'd found her through the Texas Bar Association after researching competency challenges all night. James was excellent, but this battle required someone who specialized in exactly the warfare Hunter had declared. Elena's waiting room was warm but professional, decorated with family photos and certificates. When she emerged, I was struck by her presence. Mid-50s silver-streaked hair, eyes that seemed to assess and understand simultaneously. Mr. Grant, I'm Elena Vasquez. Her handshake was firm, confident. Her office mixed law books with personal touches, including a photo of what looked like her late husband. Tell me what's happening, she said, settling behind her desk. I laid out the situation methodically. The 3-year arrangement, the financial exploitation, the eviction notice, Hunter's competency threat. Elena listened without interrupting, her pen moving efficiently. When I finished, she looked up with controlled anger on behalf of a client. What you're describing is textbook elder financial abuse. The power of attorney exploitation, the competency threats when confronted. I see this pattern weekly. Texas law is very clear about protecting elderly citizens from this manipulation. But can they actually have me declared incompetent? They can try, but they'd need substantial evidence of cognitive decline, inability to manage affairs, or danger to yourself or others. From our conversation, you're clearly sharp, articulate, and making rational decisions based on documented evidence. She leaned forward. However, these proceedings can be emotionally devastating even when you win. I thought about Maria, about how she'd handled conflict with grace. She'd always said dignity wasn't about avoiding fights, but choosing the right ones. What do you recommend? First, we need an independent psychiatric evaluation to establish your mental competency beyond question. I work with Dr. Alan Rivers. He's thorough, respected by courts, and his evaluations are bulletproof. Elena made a note. Second, we document everything. The financial exploitation, the threats, their refusal to vacate. We build a case so strong that any judge will see exactly what's happening. And if they follow through on their petition, then we're ready. But Nathaniel, may I call you Nathaniel? I need you to understand, this isn't just about legal strategy. Family cases like this take an emotional toll harder than any courtroom battle. Her words carried experience of guiding other families through similar devastation. I found myself noting the compassion mixed with professional competence. I've been alone since my wife died 6 years ago. I thought having Madeline and Hunter in the house would bring back some life. Instead, they've been slowly draining everything that mattered to Maria and me. Our savings, our traditions, our sense of family. Family isn't just about blood, Elena said gently. It's about respect, mutual support, genuine care. What you're describing isn't family, it's exploitation disguised as love. Something in her voice suggested personal experience, though she didn't elaborate. Instead, she pulled out her calendar. I can arrange the psychiatric evaluation for this week. Dr. Rivers will be thorough, but I'm confident about the results. Are you prepared to move forward? I thought about Hunter's cold smile, about Madeline's manipulative tears, about the $62,000 stolen under family loyalties guise. Then I thought about Maria's voice telling me that sometimes love meant setting boundaries even when it hurt. Schedule it, I said. And Elena, thank you for believing me. Her smile was warm professional, but something more. I don't just believe you, Nathaniel. I'm going to make sure you win. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began hope. Not just for legal victory, but for the possibility that I wasn't as alone in this fight as I'd thought. Elena's urgent call came 3 days later. Nathaniel, get to my office immediately. My investigator found something disturbing. I found Elena pacing financial documents spread across her desk. Investigator Carmen Rodriguez sat with her laptop open, looking grim. This will be difficult, Elena said gently. Carmen turned her screen toward me, showing Madeline's bank statements with highlighted entries. I noticed unusual payment patterns during background checks. Small amounts, but regular. She pointed to transactions. 200 here, 300 there, always on the 15th. All going to Dr. Marcus Webb, a psychiatrist. My stomach dropped. Neither Madeline nor Hunter mentioned seeing a psychiatrist. That raised red flags, Carmen said. 6 months of identical payments. Didn't look like therapy billing. Elena leaned forward grimly. So I tested something. Called Dr. Webb's office, identified myself as an attorney, preparing for your competency hearing, asked about scheduling an evaluation. What did they say? The receptionist said, "Oh, we already have Mr. Grant's evaluation completed and ready for court submission. Dr. Webb finished it last week." Elena's voice carried fury. "Nathaniel, this doctor wrote a psychiatric evaluation declaring you mentally incompetent, and you've never met him." The room spun. I gripped my chair, struggling to comprehend. My daughter paid a doctor to fabricate an evaluation. "It gets worse," Carmen added. Dr. Webb's been sanctioned twice by the medical board insurance fraud and writing prescriptions without examinations. Perfect candidate for questionable services. The betrayal cut deeper than stolen money or cruel text messages. Madeline hadn't just planned to steal my finances. She'd systematically constructed a fraudulent case to steal my identity, independence, dignity. "I need to confront him," I said. Elena nodded reluctantly. "Speakerphone. Carmen will record everything." Dr. Webb's voice was smooth until Elena identified herself as my attorney. Then it became nervous. "Dr. Webb, you've prepared a psychiatric evaluation for my client, Nathaniel Grant." A pause. "Yes, based on extensive consultations with his daughter regarding his deteriorating condition." "Consultations you were paid for." Madeline expressed serious concerns about her father's cognitive state. She documented behavioral patterns. Memory lapses, paranoid thinking, poor judgment. Based solely on her reports without examining the patient. "You declared him incompetent?" Elena's voice was razor-sharp. The daughter's observations were comprehensive. She documented confusion, aggressive behavior, inability to manage affairs. "Dr. Webb," I interrupted. "This is Nathaniel Grant. Every single thing my daughter told you was fabricated." Dead silence. When Webb responded, his voice shook. "Mr. Grant, if there's been a misunderstanding, the misunderstanding was believing you could take money to destroy an innocent man's reputation and call it medicine. I was acting on information from a concerned family member." "You were acting on payments from someone planning to steal my freedom," I said. "What's the market rate for a man's dignity?" Elena leaned forward. "Dr. Webb, you've admitted to preparing a fraudulent evaluation based on paid consultations. Contact your attorney immediately." After hanging up, silence filled the office. I stared at months of documented payments, evidence of my daughter's calculated campaign to have me declared unfit. "We have them," Elena said quietly. "This destroys their petition and likely results in criminal charges." But I barely heard her. I remembered the little girl who climbed into my lap during storms, who trusted me to keep her safe. Somewhere along the way, she'd decided I was the danger and paid a stranger to make it official. The legal victory felt hollow. We might win in court, but I'd lost something far more precious. The San Antonio courthouse steps felt familiar beneath my feet, though I'd never climbed them as anything but a judge. Today I was just another plaintiff seeking justice, my fate in someone else's hands for the first time in 30 years. Elena met me at security, her briefcase heavy with evidence that would either vindicate me or destroy what remained of my family. "Ready?" she asked, though we both knew ready was impossible. Courtroom 3 was smaller than where I'd presided, but the weight of justice felt the same. Judge Patricia Monroe entered, a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that had seen every kind of family destruction. We stood as she took the bench. Across the aisle, Madeline sat beside attorney Kevin Foster, looking pale in a navy dress that reminded me of her graduation. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but I could see her hands shaking as she clutched tissues. "This is a hearing regarding alleged financial exploitation and competency evaluation," Judge Monroe announced. "Ms. Vasquez, proceed." Elena stood, her voice clear and professional. "Your Honor, this case represents textbook elder financial abuse, complicated by fraudulent attempts to declare the victim mentally incompetent when he discovered the theft." She presented evidence, methodically bank statements, showing $62,000 in unauthorized transfers, power of attorney documents specifying medical emergencies, only payments to Dr. Webb for fabricated psychiatric evaluations. The respondent systematically exploited her father's trust while constructing a fraudulent competency challenge to maintain control when confronted. Kevin Foster's defense crumbled quickly. He argued Madeline was a concerned daughter protecting her father's interests, but Elena's evidence was overwhelming. When she played Dr. Webb's recorded admission to writing evaluations without examining patients, Foster's objections died. "Your Honor," Elena continued, "Dr. Webb admitted accepting payment for fraudulent psychiatric services. The respondent orchestrated this conspiracy to steal her father's independence along with his money." Judge Monroe's expression grew colder with each piece of evidence. When Elena finished, she turned to Foster. "Counselor, do you have anything addressing these allegations?" Foster looked at Madeline, now crying silently. "Your Honor, my client made mistakes. She's prepared to make restitution." "Mr. Foster," Judge Monroe interrupted, "your client didn't make mistakes. She committed systematic financial fraud and conspiracy to deprive a competent adult of civil rights." The judge's gaze fell on Madeline. "Madeline, stand up." Madeline rose unsteadily, tears streaming. For a moment, she looked like the frightened little girl who used to run to me during nightmares. "Did you take $62,000 from your father's accounts without authorization?" "Yes, Your Honor," Madeline whispered. "Did you pay Dr. Webb to write a psychiatric evaluation declaring your father mentally incompetent?" Madeline's voice broke completely. "Yes." "Did you plan using this fraudulent evaluation to control your father's assets and decisions?" A long pause, then barely audible. "Yes." Judge Monroe's ruling was swift and decisive. "The competency petition is denied. Mr. Nathaniel Grant is clearly competent. The eviction notice stands. Respondents have 15 days to vacate. Full restitution of $62,000 is ordered, plus court costs and attorney fees." She leaned forward, her voice carrying 30 years of authority. "Madeline, I'm referring this to the district attorney for possible criminal prosecution. What you've done isn't family dispute. It's elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy." As the gavel fell, I felt no triumph, only hollow ache where victory should have been. Elena squeezed my shoulder, murmuring congratulations, but I was watching Madeline collapse into her chair, sobbing while her attorney tried comforting her. In the hallway, she approached me one final time, face swollen from crying. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." I looked at this stranger wearing my daughter's face and felt only exhaustion. "I know you're sorry, Madeline, but sorry doesn't undo what you've done." Elena guided me toward the exit as Madeline's cries echoed behind us. Justice had been served, the law had protected me, and I'd won completely. So why did victory feel like the loneliest word in the world? 3 weeks after the courthouse victory that felt like defeat, I was surprised to find Madeline waiting by my car in the grocery store parking lot. She looked different, thinner, older, wearing simple clothes instead of the designer outfits Hunter had insisted she needed. Dad, please, just 5 minutes. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at Brackenridge Park, where we'd spent countless Saturday afternoons when she was small. We sat on a bench overlooking the river, silence heavy between us. Hunter's gone, she said finally. Left the day after the hearing, took what little we had and disappeared. Didn't even say goodbye. I felt no satisfaction hearing it. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right about him from the beginning. Her voice was steady, different from the manipulative tears I'd grown accustomed to. Dad, I need you to understand something. What I did wasn't his idea, it was mine. I can't blame him for my choices. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. Madeline. No, let me finish. When Mom died, I was terrified. Terrified of losing you, too terrified of being alone, terrified of not having enough money to feel safe. Instead of dealing with those fears, I decided you owed me security. I convinced myself that taking care of you meant taking from you. I studied my daughter's face, looking for manipulation signs I'd learned to recognize. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, genuine remorse. Hunter made it easier to justify, but the fear was mine. The greed was mine. The lies were mine. She pulled out folded paper. I've been seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez. She helped me write this. It's an inventory of everything I took, everything I lied about, everything I need to make right. The list was longer than I'd imagined. Not just 62,000, but smaller thefts over years. Emotional manipulations, times she'd used my grief over Maria to get what she wanted. I found a job, Dad. Administrative work downtown. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest. I'm moving into a studio apartment next week. She looked at me with eyes that reminded me of the little girl who used to confess to breaking my reading glasses. I want to pay you back everything, but more than that, I want to earn the right to be your daughter again. I thought about Maria, about conversations we'd had when Madeline was difficult as a teenager. Maria always said love without boundaries wasn't love, it was enabling, but she also believed in second chances and genuine change's power. The therapy, how long have you been going? Since the hearing, 3 times weekly. Dr. Martinez specializes in people who've hurt their families. She says I have to learn to sit with my fears instead of making other people pay for them. We sat quietly watching joggers pass on the river trail. Finally I spoke. I forgive you, Madeline. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Not calculated tears of before, but raw emotion of someone facing their own damage. I know. I don't expect to just move back in and pretend everything's fine. I want to rebuild our relationship the right way this time. As adults. With respect. That means boundaries, I said gently. No access to my finances, no power of attorney, no assuming you're entitled to anything just because you're my daughter. I understand. And Dad, I want you to be happy. Really happy. If that means I'm not part of your daily life anymore, I can accept that. For the first time in years, I heard my daughter speaking as an adult, taking responsibility for her actions and consequences. You'll always be my daughter, Madeline. But you're right, things have to be different now. Over following weeks, she kept her word. She moved into her small apartment, started making regular restitution payments, and continued therapy. When she called, it was to check my well-being, not ask for anything. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding. Not the old relationship based on my guilt and her manipulation, but something new based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. I realized something profound. I could love my daughter and protect myself simultaneously. Setting boundaries hadn't destroyed our relationship, it had saved it. Christmas morning arrived quiet and peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of Thanksgiving 2 months ago. I woke up in my own house, truly mine again, with plans that didn't revolve around other people's expectations or demands. Elena had offered to help with Christmas dinner, not as a romantic partner, but as the friend she'd become since the court case ended. Our relationship had evolved naturally from attorney-client to something warmer, though we were both taking things slowly. At our age, we'd learned the value of building solid foundations. I hope you don't mind the company. she'd said when she arrived with a homemade pie. "My son's in Oregon, and I wasn't looking forward to spending the day alone. I'm grateful for it," I replied honestly. "Last Christmas, I had a house full of people who didn't want to be here. This year, I have someone who actually chose to come." We worked together in the kitchen, our conversation easy and comfortable. Elena told me about her late husband's Christmas traditions, while I shared memories of Maria's elaborate holiday preparations. There was something healing about talking to someone who understood loss without trying to fix it. The doorbell rang at 3 o'clock. Madeline stood on my porch holding a small wrapped gift, looking nervous, but more confident than she had in years. "Hi, Dad. Merry Christmas. I hope it's okay that I stopped by." "Of course. Come meet Elena properly." The afternoon unfolded with careful grace. Madeline complimented the modest decorations I'd put up, asked Elena thoughtful questions about her work, and shared updates about her therapy and new job without being prompted. When she handed me an envelope with her monthly restitution payment plus a small Christmas bonus from her paycheck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride in my daughter. "I got promoted to senior administrative assistant," she said quietly. "It's not much, but it's honest work, and I'm good at it." "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning it completely. After Madeline left Elna, and I sat in the living room with coffee, the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. "She's really changed," Elena observed. "We all have." I looked around my house, smaller now, without Hunter's gaming equipment cluttering the sunroom, without Madeline's belongings scattered through every room, but somehow more spacious. 6 months ago, I thought I was losing my family. Now I realize I was finding myself. Elena smiled, that warm expression that had first made me see her as more than just my attorney. "What will you do with all this newfound freedom?" "I don't know yet. Maybe travel. Maybe learn something new." I paused, feeling brave. "Maybe see where this friendship of ours leads." Her smile widened. "I'd like that. We have time to figure it out." As evening approached and Elena prepared to leave, I reflected on how different this Christmas felt from that devastating Thanksgiving. I'd spent that holiday waiting for people who didn't want to be there. Today I'd shared my table with someone who chose to be here. Standing in my doorway watching Elena's car pull away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: anticipation for tomorrow, for the slow, careful building of something new, for the possibility that at 62 the best chapters of my life might still be unwritten. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the hollow silence of loneliness. It was the peaceful quiet of a man who'd learned the difference between being alone and being free. Madeline was learning to be my daughter instead of my dependent. Elena was becoming something precious that neither of us was ready to name yet. And I was finally learning that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to start over. Looking back at my story, I realized this wasn't just about money or family betrayal. It was about learning to value myself. For years, I fought the wrong battles trying to buy love instead of demanding respect. This true story taught me that sometimes the people closest to us can become our greatest opponents in life's most important battles. Don't make the mistakes I made. Don't confuse enabling with loving. Don't assume that family loyalty means accepting abuse. I learned the hard way that boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges that show people how to love you properly. The most painful lesson from this true story: sometimes you have to lose the relationship you thought you had to discover, the relationship you actually deserve. When I finally stood up to Madeline and Hunter, I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my dignity in the most crucial battle of my later years. At 62, I discovered something powerful: it's never too late to demand better. Whether you're sharing grandpa stories with your family or facing your own challenges, remember that love without respect is just manipulation with a prettier name. This true story isn't unique. Elder abuse happens in families everywhere. But here's what I want you to understand. You have the right to protect yourself, even from people you love. The hardest battle isn't always against strangers. Sometimes it's against the people who should be protecting you. Elena helped me see that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. These grandpa stories often end sadly, but mine didn't have to. Neither does yours. My final advice: trust your instincts, set your boundaries, fight your battles with dignity, and remember the people who truly love you will respect your limits, not test them. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment about your own experiences with family boundaries. Your story could help someone else find their courage. And don't forget to subscribe for more Grandpa stories that prove it's never too late to reclaim your life.